Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, the website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Jumping right into it, the playoffs is here. The playoffs have begun in the NBA, the bubble playoffs, whatever you want to call them. And man, you know what? I was worried that it was going to be a little flat with the lack of a crowd and the atmosphere being a little kind of fabricated to make it seem like it's more of a home court advantage for one team over the other. What I didn't see though was any of that. Honestly, I felt like the lack of a natural and organic crowd there was kind of evening the playing field. And you see a lot more runs, a lot more wild swings in the scoring, and getting right into it, man, it was a really exciting night of NBA basketball. So first off, you had the Utah Jazz falling to the Denver Nuggets 135 to 125. There were 19 lead changes in this game, but I'm bearing the lead here because Donovan Mitchell went for 57 points. Now, again, I just said he took the L, but 57 points, 7 assists, 9 rebounds. Of course, they did fall to 0-1. Now, Mitchell was 57% from the floor, 40% from three, and he went 13 of 13 from the free throw line, but it gets better. 22 points in the fourth quarter. And I heard a lot of people calling, saying that it's really empty buckets. He's a stat padder and this, that, and the third. First of all, it's Utah. I don't really care. Like, duh. You do what you got to do to get the hell up out of there. But more importantly than that, I don't know how you call 22 points in the fourth quarter empty buckets when, and I saw this on Twitter, so it's not my analogy, but I think it's really fitting when you drive to the lane, if you're Donovan Mitchell, and your two kick-out options are Royce O'Neal and Juwan Morgan. Now, you can say that he should be trusting them. Okay, but, like, do you? Because I don't. And again, he had 57. 22 in the fourth quarter. I don't know how you call that empty buckets. I'm sorry. I don't even care if you want to say he wasn't passing. He definitely is a shoot-first guard. That's an understatement. But to say empty buckets and to call him a stat pattern is odd because, again, wasn't much shaking from it. Now, how much of that is because he wasn't sharing the ball that he wasn't getting much help? But regardless of that, I just don't see it. I can't call 22 points in the fourth quarter empty buckets. I'm sorry. Rudy Gobert had 17 and 7. If you are a big man, and I've said this about numerous big guys, it's one of my big criticisms of Lowry Marketing here in Chicago, even though he plays the fourth position. Rudy Gobert, defensive player of the year formerly, one of the better centers in the NBA. If you only got 7 boards at 7 feet, that's a waste of space, bro. I can't. 7 boards, you're not on the perimeter, right? He's not a 3-point shooter, so you got to be getting offensive boards. 7? Bam, that's not good enough. And then 17 points is not really great either, if you're not, especially because you're not giving those the extra effort on the glass. Joe Ingles chipped in 19. Jordan Clarkson, and we talked about him a couple of episodes ago and how he was a great find and fit for this offense, for this team rather. 18 points, and for all that they were doing, you can see they missed another score. Boban, Bojan. I always get the two of them. It's a Bogdanovich. I get the two of them between he and the guard from the Kings, the wing from the Kings, confused. But 57, 22 and 4. That's not empty buckets. So on the other side, Jamal Murray had 36 points, 9 assists, and he was hitting some big shots down the stretch. Joker tipped in 29 points, 10 boards. Jeremy Grant had 19. Michael Porter Jr. had 13 points. But what's interesting about him is that he played 4 minutes and 22 seconds in the fourth quarter due to his inability to really do anything on defense. That's a problem. You kind of need him. Now, granted, 13 points doesn't seem like anything that we were seeing from him throughout the bubble where he was showing us those glimpses of greatness, and this was pretty spread out throughout the rest of the game. But to have him on the floor for less than 5 minutes in the fourth quarter, he was a -2, I think, when he came out for the quarter. I mean, you didn't nearly need him, obviously. You won by 10 points. It was a closer game than it seemed because the Jazz played without Mike Conley. And one of the things that I've been saying about really both of these teams, but about the Nuggets because they've been the one who received the most hype, is I think they're a good team. And they're probably even a really good team. But they're not a great team. They're definitely not a championship contender. And I think we see that here with how they played against these Jazz without Conley. Of course, Mitchell was pulling the Herculean effort, so you got to give him credit there. But the Jazz ended up getting outscored. This game went to overtime, by the way. The Jazz ended up getting scored 20-10 in overtime. I just can't help but feel like Conley at least steadies the game a little bit, maybe slows it down. There was an 8-second violation that's going to haunt Mitchell for a while. I'm not ready to say that this game was great for the Nuggets, despite the fact that Murray had himself a game down the stretch and Joker played well all around. You gave up 57, and Murray was on social media, not mocking, but really celebrating Mitchell's accomplishment. I just don't know how the Nuggets. First of all, if they make it out of this one, because I picked them to win, and go check out the Twitter to see all my picks and how many games. I'm not gonna repeat them here, so I don't want to get the numbers wrong. But I did pick Denver to win this series, and I still think they will. But damn, if I'm not disappointed in that effort. Again, when you're down a player like that, that's supposed to be the advantage that the better team, needs to just kind of bury you. And while it ends up looking like a decisive victory with 10 points, it wasn't like that. Again, 19 lead changes. That's terrible. Denver's not going to make it. They're not going to win. I don't think they're going to make it to West Conference Finals, to be honest with you. There's no way playing like this they're going to make it. So that was the first game. The next game was the Toronto Raptors smacking around the Brooklyn Nets. This game was 73-51 at halftime. Fred VanVleet, though, went off for 30 points and 11 assists. He shot 73% from the floor, but that's not the best part. He was 80% from 3, 8 for 10. Come on home, Fred. Come on home. Rockford native. Come to the crib. Oh, my gosh. 30 and 11, 73 and 80% from 8 to 10. Damn it, that boy about to get paid. That's a shame because the Bulls don't have any money, but they could certainly use it because not only is he obviously capable of being a sniper on the outside, but he's a steadying presence. He's a defender. He's a tough player. Chicago, he'd be a perfect fit next to Kobe White in that backcourt. And Zach LaVine, if you want to run a 3-guard lineup or starting him with Zach and Kobe, whatever you want to do, I wish there was a way that he would end up in a Bulls uniform because the man put on one hell of a performance. His teammates, though, were chipping in as usual. Serge Ibaka had 22 and 7. Pascal Siakam, last year's most improved player, and candidate for people wanted him to be a candidate for it again this year with him raising his level even further without Kawhi around. 18 and 11. That's a solid all-around game for him. And then Kyle Lowry, Mr. Do a little bit of everything. 16 points, 6 assists, and 7 boards. And really, you saw him hustling and getting into guys. And Kyle Lowry is that dude. I see now, like I've said on here before that I've kind of been a person who was down on Kyle Lowry. But I've grown to have such an appreciation for what he does. It's everything. And I think that's why it bothers everybody because it's not any special skills, honestly. Like, I'm not saying he's not a talented basketball player. He's in the top 1% of his profession. But his greatest ability is his want to, his desire. And I think that people might hate it because they can't match that kind of intensity. This dude is a grinder, man. Like, I've never been the biggest Kyle Lowry fan, but every time I watch him play and see him do all the stuff that's not going to show up in the stat sheet, I end up walking away a little bit more impressed with how much he's done, given the fact that he gets so much shade, mostly from me, but that's not the point. Again, just props to him. But Fred VanVleet, boy, 30 and 11, 73 and 80. Oh my God. The Nets' leading scorer was Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot with 26 points. Now, why is that significant? Well, if you recall, the out superstars for the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, one of the reasons they wanted to get rid of and ended up getting it to happen, Kenny Atkinson as head coach, because they wanted another superstar to get there. They wanted to start DeAndre Jordan, and Atkinson had built this culture up and was trying to keep his rotations the same. Well, the guy that we thought was going to be the star, Karis LeVert, came in with 15 points and 15 assists. That's a hell of a game in and of itself. I'm not sure exactly what that means going forward. I don't know if you consider him a superstar, but your leading scorer can't be Luwawu-Cabarrot and you expect to win the game. That's just not the way it's going to happen. Jared Allen chipped in 15 points and 12 boards. The Fro was getting busy, but they just don't have enough, and they can't penetrate this defense enough to make a difference. And again, the Raptors were just doing a little bit of everything. 80% from 3 from Fred VanVleet. Come on, fam. I think you got another 12 points from OG as well. The Raptors showed why they were a championship team and why they had a really good record even without Kawhi last year. They're still that group, and man, this is going to be a short series. This one was one that I thought would be a gentleman's sweep. 5 games. I'm not sure it's going to make it that. 73-51 and a half. The Nets outscored the Raptors by, I think, 12 in the third quarter and were still down by 9 points. It was not good. Not good at all. The third game, the Boston Celtics went up against the 76ers, came out of that one 1-0. Joel Embiid had 26 and 16, but he looked a little gassed by the end of the game. Remember, the Sixers are playing without forward, point guard, whatever you want to call him. He's a point guard. They're trying to play him power forward to make it a little bit better, whatever. Ben Simmons and Embiid had 2016. He looked tired, like I said. Looked tired without his running mate there, and they looked rudderless. He himself said that he needs to be more aggressive down the stretch, and Tony Jones on Twitter actually had a good breakdown of Howard Bryant, had a breakdown of Embiid's his fourth quarter from like 11 minutes on, and we only had like 5 or some shots, and he wasn't going into the paint trying to bang. And Embiid himself acknowledged that he needs to be more aggressive. This is going to be a tall task regardless against a very complete, well, I don't want to say complete because we'll talk about that in a second, but it's going to be a tall task going against the Celtics, and he can be more aggressive, but he already looked tired. If he wasn't being aggressive because of that, I'm not sure he's going to be able to fix that throughout the series. His teammates Alec Burks and Josh Richardson chipped in 18 points apiece. Tobias Harris, a guy who's making max money, 15 points, 40% from the floor, 0 for 3 from deep. That's not good enough, especially with Ben Simmons out. You have to be that second guy for Embiid, and I'm talking about 20 plus. This isn't an option, right? Without Ben, you have to be the superstar or the superstar, the player that people thought could be a superstar scorer at least when you were with the Clippers a couple of years ago. So, and if you've been following, and I know you have, Tobias is my boy, Cold World, my boy, but that's not good enough. Especially, again, like I said, without having Simmons on the floor. And then the other guy, Al Horford, who's kind of been moved around from the starting lineup to the bench because it wasn't working with the spacing. He had a pedestrian 6, 7, and 6 line tonight, and that's just sad. Listen, I picked the Celtics to win this one. This one, I think I said 6 games. I'm reaching again. Check out the Twitter, Josh G. Buck, to find out all of my picks for games here. But this was an effort that I just didn't expect to see from him, and they're going to need a lot more than this if they're going to try to make this a competitive series. On the flip side, Jason Tatum had 32 and 13, and while we could talk about how great that is, he wasn't very visible in the fourth quarter. He did hit some, again, clutch shots are always important, but his teammates, Jaylen Brown, who had 29 points of his own, had 15 in the fourth quarter, and Kemba Walker, who actually came in questionable because of his knee, 19 points, and he had 11 in the fourth quarter. So you got 26 points from 2 guys not named Jason Tatum, and Boston decided to do what they do and go up 1-0. Again, like I said, I'm not sure that Philadelphia has much of a shot if you're going to get efforts like this from the other guy. Again, Burks and Richardson was solid. Tobias needs to step up, and Embiid says he wants to be more aggressive, but if you look tired and you weren't being as aggressive as you can be, that to me does not bode well for the long term. So I would probably be wary of that, if nothing else, just because, like I said, you don't know how they're going to handle it. You don't know what else are you going to do. You're going to feed him the ball, and he's dominant. Embiid, when right, is the most dominant player in the NBA since Shaq. But like Shaq, it's when he's right. Now, it's even worse than Shaq because Shaq didn't have the injury issues, at least not in his prime, that you have with Embiid. So him looking gas, maybe that was just dejection from being down and doing all he felt he could do. Again, 26 and 16 is no slouch line. But bigger news for Boston, Gordon Hayward sprained his ankle, and he came down on teammate Daniel Tice's foot, and that thing was sideways. He was standing on his ankle for a brief second there and walked off gingerly, and they said he went for an MRI. Results should come shortly, but that's a big blow, and this could be what ends up helping the Sixers get back in and balance it out, make it more competitive. I still think Boston just has a more complete team, but the size that Philly can throw at you, Embiid in particular, is a problem for the Celtics because their biggest guy, Robert Williams, is a younger dude. He's not Joel Embiid basically, and he's not really a match for him. In his canter, he's a great rebounder. He's just not Embiid. So losing Hayward, that's that scoring threat. Now, I assume that Brad Stevens and co will figure out a way to pick up the slack, but that's a big blow. And then this has to happen because I, for one, went on a lot of attention. I've done this already, but it's time again for another Mea Luca. This is my version of the mea culpa, where I have to acknowledge that I was wrong about Luka Doncic and how cold that boy is. Now, I am not one who tends to give him the benefit of the youth aspect because he has been playing pro since he was 16 years old. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that he's only 21 and killing the game in the NBA at the highest level. And that being said, my man went off for a playoff debut record 42 points against the Los Angeles Clippers. And that's, guys, I'm talking about, if Paul George and Kawhi aren't 1 and 2 in the NBA defensively, they're like 2 and 3, right? I don't know who's better. Giannis, maybe, because he's probably. So this is at worst, you have 2 of the top 5 guys. That's on off nights if they play like that for an entire year, and they don't. Luka had 42. And this is after he rolled his ankle early on. He slipped and hurt himself and kind of limped off, gingerly came back in and just proceeded to put it to him. And this was evenly spread throughout the game. This wasn't like a 1/4 explosion, a half explosion. He was getting busy, moving Kawhi off the spot to create some separation at the basket. However, many were quick to point out his poor defensive effort and the fact that he had 11 turnovers, which, if we're going to talk about his playoff debut record, 42 points, we have to talk about the fact that he was one off of the record for turnovers with 11. That was Harden, who has 12. And we kill Harden for his turnovers. Got to do the same thing for Luka and the defense, and Harden led the league in steals, so Luka's not doing that. Doesn't take away from the fact that the kid is an offensive phenom and can get his whenever he wants to against anybody. But my bad, I was wrong, flat out. Dude is cold. And he brings the team together in a way that I wasn't even aware of how nice together Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway. Tim Hardaway had 18 points. That's incredible, just because of the lows that he had gone to when he got that big deal from New York. And now you see him in a better situation. Clearly, he's defending, shooting well from the perimeter. Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy who I'm sure I was late on, but again, I am impressed with how those two play. And then you have Luka's European running mate, Kristaps Porzingis. He had 14 points. Now, before you be like, well, Staps wasn't doing nothing. He got ejected for pretty early in the second half. And I have to say it was BS. He got 2 techs. First tech was crap, right? For Miller getting upset at a call. And maybe the ref heard something. I'm not going to say he didn't say anything. But I would, so usually when they say it, right, for a guy like Kristaps who does come from another country, I would imagine if he was to cuss at somebody, it would be in a different language. But if it's not, it would have to be pretty bad for me to see them giving him a technical for it. Now, the second one, which was even worse, was him. No. The first one was worse because I don't think he did anything. But the second one was, according to Steve Jaffe, he walked in as an aggressor and ended up in a bit of a dust up between Marcus Morris and Luka, playing enforcer protected for his guard, his team star, and got ejected for it. And that was the motivating cause behind him getting kicked out of the game. They said the first time that it was, I think, waving a hand at the referee, and I was today years old when I learned that waving your hand at the referee is an automatic tech. Well, there is your damn problem. Waving the hand, first of all, it's the playoffs, right? Emotions are going to happen, especially when the call that they reviewed, right, ended up being it was a block. Kristaps had actually had gotten fouled, and they called it clean on the other end by Ivica Zubac. On the way back down, Staps comes back and blocks somebody cleanly, and they called the foul on him, and that's when he kind of went off, and they gave him the tech. Double bad. Like, it was just all bad, little run for Kristaps, and then again, like I said, second half, he gets ejected because of that, trying to protect Luka. Bad look. Mavericks, I didn't expect them to come out this way. They ended up losing the game, obviously, but I can't definitively say if they didn't have Porzingis that they would have lost. I honestly think if they had Porzingis, they would have won, and that'll probably be my late night tweet to make sure that the Twitterverse is sleeping. Surprised to say the least by the offense of the Mavericks, who I think shot a little bit better than their expectations were. They got kind of cold later on in the game, but they were shooting at halftime. I think it was 57% they were shooting from three. Meanwhile, the Clippers were at 47%, and both of these teams hover around 37% for the season. So the Mavericks were hitting a little bit of everything. Now, my thing is, with jump shooting teams, you always, end up having those cold streaks that can end up costing, which is how long do they last. But for the Clippers, I'm not sure that this bodes well for them long term. We'll get to that in a second, but this was worrying for me. Now, granted, in a bad night, You got 29 and 12 from Kawhi Leonard. But he was 1 of 7 from 3. 1 of 7 from 3. You got 27 points from Paul George. Together they had 19 points in the fourth quarter. You got 19 points from Marcus Morris, but here's where it gets kind of interesting for the Clippers. Lou Will and Montrezl Harrell combined for 20 points total. During the regular season, both of these guys averaged more than 18 points per game, so you have to figure they're not going to play that well, and if you combine that with the fact that, like I said, for much of the game, Dallas was shooting the lights out of the gym, this probably won't go as well as we saw. This might have been the Mavericks' best chance. Now, that being said, Staps will be back next game, and if it comes out the same way, it's going to be a problem. And that'll lead me to my next part tomorrow, Tuesday's expectations, where you have 4 games. We'll start off with the Lakers, who I think will beat the Blazers. Now, I said this series is going to go 6, but I think the Lakers come out proving a point in game 1 and kind of put it on the Blazers and kind of shock them. But I could see the upset happen. My point is, though, this Lakers team is going to be, if we get what we think of the matchup with the Clippers and the Lakers, what would it be? Western Conference Finals? I got to check the bracket. I think that would be the case. But if we get that matchup, what I saw against Dallas is not going to be any better against the Lakers. Now, granted, LeBron's not looking to score that way, but you have a much deeper team. And while Kristaps is a bigger, taller guy than Anthony Davis is the much more complete player. Defensively, at least, you get more out of him than you're going to get from Kristaps, and he can do just everything that Kristaps can do on the offensive side. I'm not sure how well that bodes for the Clippers. Now, granted, they do get up for those Lakers games, but you can't afford to be trying to turn it on and off. I believe that during the broadcast, it was mentioned that the Clippers had only had their starting lineup together for 12 games. That was like the 12th game. They're still trying to figure each other out. So the Lakers are doing the same, but I just feel like they've gotten to play together a lot more. And again, when the main guy on your team is LeBron, who's playing point guard this year, leading the league in assists, I'm sure you've heard that never. That's troubling. You're not going to get 20 points total from Lou Will and Trez combined. But they had no answer for Porzingis when he was playing. He could get a little bit what he wanted, and then Luka, you're not stopping Luka. Like they were trying and not stopping Luka. Pat Beverly was hacking Moggs. Like it was not a good look for the Clippers. Now maybe that's just some, they overlooked these guys, and they'll come back and put it to them next game. But when we see tomorrow, we'll see tomorrow. We'll see on Tuesday. Tuesday will show us what kind of business the Lakers are about, and I think they're going to come out here to prove a point, send a message that they are the favorites and should be, at least in the Western Conference. I picked the Blazers. I picked the Lakers in 6. After what I saw tonight, I could see the Lakers trying to step up their game and knocking them out in 5, gentlemen sweep, and that's just because I give Damian Lillard the benefit of the doubt that he can get at least a couple games, or at least a game rather. But people are rightfully pointing out that he got swept up a couple of years ago by Anthony Davis, who was pretty much running solo. That's not really true, though, because he had Drew Holiday, a very underrated guard, with him down there in New Orleans. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that you'll see a lot of the Blazers throwing multiple bodies at Anthony Davis. But what about Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee? If they can keep those two out of trouble, I'm not sure that the Blazers, despite having Nurkic, Hassan Whiteside, and Zach Collins, are going to have enough to keep the Lakers' inside presence a non-factor. The other games and how I'm expecting them to go, the Bucks and the Magic, come on, fam. About to be 2-time MVP, but a good chance of being Defensive Player of the Year this year against the Magic. Without Jonathan Isaac, no less. I just don't see them getting a game in this one. Like, I try to give teams the benefit of the doubt and try to find a spot where they can get. I do not see the Magic. Unless the Bucks can't hit the broad side of a barn with Splash Mountain and the boys, Chris Middleton and those guys who's going to have to show something this postseason. I don't see them needing to be against the Magic, though. They just don't have enough. Heat Pacers, this is my, I guess, lone upset. I'm not sure how you feel about it, though, because the Pacers, I think, are a team still coming together. Meanwhile, but a very talented team, very capable of winning this series. I just like what the Heat do and how they play. Jimmy Butler brings a toughness to a team that's already going to be in shape, more in shape than you are, and they're coached very well. It's a very solidly run organization. So I do expect that to be the case. Now, this is the one that needs to have the biggest caveat. I picked the Rockets in 7 against the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I will say that is very dependent upon how long Russell Westbrook is out. Rumors are that he can play by this weekend, but that would be game 3. If that's the case, it could be too late. If he is to and I still give them the 7 games if he misses those 2. I don't see them winning if he misses any more than that. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he only missed 1 and the Thunder still won. They're a very technically sound team, very disciplined. CP3's got those guys playing well, and he knows James Harden. So I could see their discipline counteracting the Rockets, no matter how methodical it may be, sometimes reckless use of the 3-point line. I could a cold night from the Rockets could be a great night for the Thunder, because if the Thunder get a lead, what are the Rockets going to do with Steven Adams? Who's guarding Danilo Gallinari? 6'10", shooting that thing. Again, Steven Adams, there's no one on. PJ Tucker, love you, bro. Shoe game is killer. You're not stopping Steven Adams. Now, if the Rockets get to running, they could get Adams off the floor. But again, I could see this game with Chris Paul being a Thunder pace control, barring the Rockets getting out in front, obviously, that could make this a very interesting series. That was my one caveat. I picked the Rockets, but I could very easily see this going the Thunder's way and wouldn't be surprised by it at all. Wouldn't be upset. Not at all. Can't wait to break down those games, and honestly, I wish that my Chicago Bulls were there, but that doesn't mean that they haven't been getting any run in the news. As you know, they recently fired head coach Jim Boylen. That was a moment of silence to celebrate. Ending his year-and-a-half run, 30-something to 80-something record, near mutiny, and apparently a litany of transgressions inside the organizations, including snapping off on a chef. Darnell Mayberry of The Athletic documented all of these things and kind of painted a really bleak picture. But what was really interesting to me, and it didn't come out from that story, but came out over the weekend, Boylen basically thought that Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley didn't have the guts to fire him. He had heard all of the public comments about Reinsdorf's financial struggles and how ownership liked him and how there was some lingering guard pass remnants that still like him, and he figured that he would be able to make it. First of all, that is incredibly arrogant. That is incredibly bullheadish, no pun intended, but it's also extremely on brand for Jim Boylen. I saw it tweeted out that Boylen is not a bad coach. Zach LaVine just makes him look like, hell no. If your entire argument that Boylen's not a bad coach is Zach LaVine's renegade ways at times, you weren't watching enough games, because, man, the dude is bad. The dude is bad, fam. From the way he interacted with the players to the way that he executed the game plan. Bad. Horrible. But what's funny is, rumor has it that Boylen's also on the short list of candidates for the Pelicans job. Have y'all not been paying attention? Like, dude, man, come on, fam. Man thought he was Teflon Boylen. He really thought that he wasn't going to get fired. Now, that's not surprising when you hear the like I said, the talk from management, the articles that were being written by guys like Casey Johnson and Joe Cowley about how, well, it could happen. Hell, even I wrote one that said, get ready for more Boylen, because I figured in the year without fans and the decreased revenue that he was for sure he would come back for. He was one of the cheapest coaches. He thought that his salary, dude, he had every reason to believe, other than the fact that we all saw him coach already. Like I said, I wasn't sure why they were keeping him around anyway after being here since 2015. I don't know what else there was to learn about Jim Boylen, but they found something, and they didn't like it. After talking with players and everything like that, AK and Eversley came out and basically said that, it's time to move on. They did so, and the candidates that have been listed have been Ime Udoka of the Sixers, who actually might replace Brett Brown. Can never say that man's name. It's probably what I get for talking trash. Might replace Brett Brown as the head coach of the Sixers should he continue to flounder. I'm not a fan of Brett Brown. I think he was blessed with a very talented team that is misused. And if Philly is smart, they would probably move Udoka up. But I do often wonder, in situations like that, if the guy who is the candidate is such a good candidate, Why is he under the guy who's not a really good coach? And riddle me that, Batman, because I'm just not a fan of what Brett Brown brings to the table. Now, other guys mentioned on the list were Adrian Griffin, who I'm not sure how much you can still put, and how many eggs you can put in that basket after the domestic violence accusations that came out against him. But then there's one that I was proponent of, Kenny Atkinson, the former coach of the Brooklyn Nets. As we talked about earlier, he got kicked out by the duo, the mercurial duo of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And a lot of people say, oh, he can't work with superstars. And I'm quick to point out, you really want to judge him based off of those two guys? Now, that's not to say that they're not talented, but we know that they can be wishy-washy at best. And I don't mean that negative. I just mean that they're what they want tends to change a lot more frequent than most. That's fine. It's just I refuse to believe that a guy who got D'Angelo Russell to become an all-star and had a culture brewing there to the point where those guys and Kyrie and KD wanted to be there. I find that hard to believe that Atkinson's just not a good coach. The development of guys like Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, who was coming along nicely before they got rid of Atkinson, I find that really hard to believe. That's why he's my top coach. And that's nothing against Udoka. That question that I asked about why he can't, we'll see. If they let him go too, I don't know. But I do wonder about the Griffin thing's probably not going to happen. The other option was Wes Unseld Jr., who's currently with the Nuggets. And you see there with him and Udoka the ties between Eversley and Karnisovas. I think you bring in Atkinson, you get a third point of view. Listen, I just don't think it's wrong. I don't see there being a wrong way. There are some who are pushing for the Udoka hire to see a new face in there, and that's fine. But I think getting a new face for the sake of a new face can be detrimental as well. Kenny Atkinson is a guy who I think was on his way to proving that he belonged among the better coaches in the NBA, among the Budenholzers, among the Nick Nurses, and got ousted by two guys who, let's face it, have not had the best reputations. I don't want to talk about them as if they're bad people, but we saw our Irving's. What happened with him with Cleveland and then later on with Boston and how Boston thrived without him. The Nets were for moments thriving better without him. Kevin Durant is going to be a great player. That's not in question here. But they came in trying to dictate how the flow is going to go, and you expect that. But they kind of tossed Atkinson to the side, and I just think that their loss would be the Bulls' gain. So that's my breakdown of how that goes. But don't forget, this part of the conversation started because Jim Boylen thought that he was invincible. Just take a moment and think about that. Jim Boylen thought that he was invincible. He didn't coach with the right amount of fear. That's one for the annals right there. Switching gears, and it's a quick rundown because we are just now entering training camps. In fact, first padded practice here for the Chicago Bears, and we'll get into that in a second. But starting off the news in the NFL, Alex Smith was cleared for football activities. And look, while I commend him for making a return and going through all the 17 surgeries, something like that he went through, and his leg looked not great upon being done. And then seeing him walk, though, in the video for them saying that he was cleared, he still has a very noticeable limp. And I have to wonder, what does football activities mean? Why was he cleared? And what are the plans for him? Because if I'm a family member, I'd have to be strongly against this. You almost lost your leg the first time. It doesn't look great now. And again, you're still not moving well. How are you cleared? Who cleared you for this? And then you remember he played for Washington. And before I dunk on Washington too hard, I do want to say that they made NFL history, hired the first black president in NFL history. But in an article that I wrote for Clocker Sports, you got to kind of temper the kudos for this organization because they have been mired in controversy for decades, starting with their logo and name that they recently changed. That's why they're now the Washington Football Team. Daniel Snyder has been recently asked by minority owners to sell his stake of the team. But out of this has come a very diverse staff, including, again, the first black president in NFL history. You have Ron Rivera, the only Hispanic coach in the NFL. You have a female assistant coach, not the first, but a black female assistant coach on the staff. There's a female marketing executive, I believe, and I'm so sorry about that. That I can't. I'm blanking on her name. Jennifer King is the assistant coach. I'm blanking on the front office name, but there's a very diverse staff, and in the article, I kind of point out we do need to celebrate that this is happening, but we have to be careful who we praise for making it happen. And I often talk about how the downside of these type of moments is while they're great for the individual, they hurt on some level the future of it, because there's always going to be that sector that questions, oh, they only got that spot because of the goings on around it. And I say it in the piece because Snyder is quoted as saying that the man that they hired for the president job, Jason Wright, former NFL running back, Northwestern running back, MBA from UIC, he's got his psychology degree from Northwestern, very accomplished. He worked for McKinsey and Company, a consulting firm that helps basically businesses rebrand themselves. Daniel Snyder, owner of the Washington football team, said that if he was building the perfect person, it would be right instead of third. And I call BS on that, because if it was the case, you would have done so already. It wouldn't have taken this for it to happen. And my point in the article is that, listen, while Mr. Wright is deserving, he's 38 years old, deserving of this job, and it's great to see him, he's certainly not the first person to be qualified for it. And if it took all this to make it happen, just think of how many other people have been passed over. And before anybody gets butthurt about it, I explained that a lot of hiring practices often tend to be, who you are familiar with, and who people who look like you tend to be more comfortable with. Not excusing it at all. I'm telling you what's happening. And before you can get past it, you got to acknowledge that that's what happens. I think that when we talk about the problems with the coaching hires, you have to talk about the problems in the front office as well, with lack of diversity and the people who are being included. This league, the NFL, is 70% black and has been so for quite some time. It's a shame that it took till 2020 to have the first black president. That doesn't make much sense. Melvin Ingram of the Los Angeles Chargers wants more money. Teammate and sackmate Joey Bosa got his contract. Melvin wants his contract. He's been doing it a little bit longer. Doesn't have the hype around his name, but he's a very steady pass rusher, and they should probably pay him. He was sitting on the sidelines because he wants more money. Another lineman for the Dallas Cowboys, Gerald McCoy, ruptured his quad. He's out for the season, and this is sad because they were just people were just marveling at the offensive line that they were going to have with recently acquired Everson Griffin opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. You had Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe in the middle, and now without McCoy, you kind of lose some of that pass rush. You still have Tristan Hill, and maybe this is a good thing for Tristan Hill, last year's second round pick, and he gets a chance to kind of show what he can do. But losing McCoy hurts them, and they were Randy Gregory's a possibility of coming back. Alden Smith is out in camp. Like, that sucks. And it's early, and I think this is the first one. He wasn't the only one who's going away for this year even. Rodney Gunter retires due to an enlarged aorta. Jacksonville Jaguars lineman, and his story is unique. He said he has a rare disease, and the issue for him is that they were told him that if he keep playing, he could do permanent damage. Now his heart is, I think, 50% enlarged, the valve, but in order to get the surgery that he needs to correct it, it has to be 55%, something along those lines. Like, it's a really small fraction, so he has to wait, and instead of risking anything, he's going to retire now. We've seen this in the recent past. Guys retire for health reasons. Maybe get that sorted out, and maybe he comes back in a couple of years. But, whew, that's rough. Aaron Lynch, former Bear, Aaron Lynch, retires as well. Listen, he was a guy who I had high hopes for when he got drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. It just never came to fruition, and especially when he was with my Bears last year, they needed a third pass rusher, and they really needed a second pass rusher because Leonard Floyd wasn't it. It just wasn't him. Sad. Wish that he had done a lot more. Wish he had been a lot better. Because I thought coming out that he was going to be a good player. Speaking of the Bears, they had their first padded practice on Monday, and a couple of notes that came out of there real quickly. Neither QB, neither Mitchell Trubisky or Nick Foles distinguishes themselves, but the stories that were coming out, we saw the video of Mitch finding Jimmy Graham, and people were breaking down his hip placement and his overhand throwing motion and how tight the spiral was. And then you get reports from guys who were able to watch it. And again, there's no live tweeting the Bears practices because the Bears are archaic. But you get, misses, and some were communicating them as drops. But it reminded me a lot of last year, where a lot of what the brass was saying was admiring Mitch's decisions and how he was, dedicated and working hard, and there was some good stuff happening and learning, and I don't want to hear none of that, fam. None of it means nothing. That's why that video of him throwing a gram was like the most useless thing. We've seen this. Mitch is apparently a okay enough practice player to get people to lie for him, or not tell the entire story. And it was pointed out by, I believe, the Bears Brawl, the Bears Bar Room. One of the groups responded back to me that, he shouldn't be getting this benefit of the doubt because his replacement's on the roster. I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. Because I can't go through another season of them telling me that he's going to be great, and then we come to see that nothing's changed. Pass rusher, free agent, prize acquisition, Robert Quinn was on the sideline in a ramp up because he had dealt with an injury recently. That's not a good thing. And then Jalen Johnson, a guy that we had talked about a couple weeks ago, Chuck Pagano, had said that he was slowly healing up from his shoulder injury that's caused him to be kind of delayed in camp. He was not running with the ones today, which is to be expected. It's first padded practice. He's a rookie, got to learn. And you have a guy, a former first-round pick in Artie Burns, who was a burn victim, repeated burn victim, and Kevin Tolliver, who were doing most of the running with the ones. Listen, it's going to be an interesting battle, but I fully expect Jalen Johnson to earn that position. If for no other reason than Tolliver is nothing special, and Artie Burns has an appropriate last name. That's not to be a downer. It's just not. I just don't see it in the card. So that's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshyBug. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, the email address, clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, check out all the other great articles being written by the guys. We're just trying to do it, man. Just trying to make it happen. Be sure to tune in Thursday around 9 p.m. for the Clocker Sports Roundtable discussion. And if you want to have your topic talked about, go ahead and submit it. You can either hit me up again, like I said, on Twitter, JoshyBuck, or hit up the Clocker Sports Twitter handle or the Clocker Sports Facebook page. Of course, check out the Writing Glass World of Pro Football, working on a ranking of position groups for the NFC North. So check on that. That's going to be coming out soon, probably either later this week or early next week. And also doing some discussion for the Bulls stuff, like I said, on Pippen Ain't Easy, discussing what's going to happen now that they've cleared out the way for a new head coach and what that can mean for the offense for the roster, going forward. Other than that, man, you know what it is. Keep it going. And I think that might be the horns. I'm gone.